Hey, welcome to the Road to 50 podcast. I'm your host, Leah Steele, and today I'm joined by my beautiful friend, Amy Bingham, and we have a super exciting episode for you today. This episode is titled The Vegan and the Carnivore. And this actually stemmed from, we were having breakfast this morning, and we were talking about the radical transformations that we've both had in our lives, really like over the last couple of years for you, more recently for me. And that we've done it in, you couldn't be more polar opposite in how we've achieved our goals. So we thought, let's record a podcast about it and basically share the conversation that we were having at breakfast today, because I think it's something that really needs to be discussed. And I think it's so important. So Amy, thank you for being on the show.
Yes. Yeah. It's funny. I keep laughing at how drastically different, right? So, I've been really strictly vegan, and which is cutting out all meat and all dairy, and how much of a change and how much my body has needed it and wanted it. And I would have never have realized. I mean, it's been an interesting last few years for me. Yeah.
So yeah, tell us a little bit about, just make sure you're speaking up so that the audio, so Shane can capture your audio. You can edit that part out, Shane. Yeah, so tell me a little bit about your journey, and maybe share a little bit of your life journey, in regards to eating and weight and life and where you found yourself and why you embarked on the journey that you've embarked on to create the transformation, just so that they have a little bit of history of who you are and where you came from.
Yeah. I think back my whole life, it's been something I've struggled with as far as eating, as far as really feeling very powerful in my body and feeling even on a health level and physical level. I mean, I used to run all the time, do all the Ragnars, right? Do all the races, all those things. And yet I never felt strong. I never felt like, even if I was eating all of the ways that, right, are out there, if you need to be getting the lean meat and all the things I would try. And it was just like this desperate attempt that it never felt like I was getting any kind of results, or that it felt like on any level that my body was thriving. And I mean, this has been my lifelong journey. And it was like, okay, just realize this is your body, and just realize this is a struggle. And it doesn't matter if you're running and working out 5 or 6 times a week, like this is just how your body is, and you just deal with it, right? And I remember this was maybe five years ago. I was actually in a group meditation. And this is really where everything kind of unfolded for me. I was in this group meditation, and I think we were covering some chakra, and all of a sudden I was completely surrounded by my spirit guides, and it felt like ancestors. It just felt like this intense feeling of ancestors, but I couldn't identify, is this what side of the family line it was on. And in that, I was being told and shown that I'm going to be healing up and down the family line. And it felt like it was all in regards to body and nutrition and body image and all these things. And within minutes of leaving this group meditation, I get home and every part of my body had started to change, as far as immediately what I was my go-to of eating just couldn't even process through my body any longer. And on every level, what I'm picking up and eating, what is in my home, what my natural way of, right? Chicken's my protein, chicken and salmon are my go-to, what I would be eating in the morning for breakfast, the healthy snacks, all the things that have always been on my list of this is the healthy, appropriate way to be eating. And it all of a sudden just, my body couldn't take it. And it was from the moment I had left this intense meditation that I was in. And so in those moments, I had spent quite a few weeks of trying to understand what was going on with my body. I knew it was related to this big message that I had from my ancestors and spirit guides about how much healing work that I was going to be doing. And through the DNA, through our genetics, through my whole family line. But after 2 to 3 weeks, we're talking like everything is just running through my body. After every single day, 2 to 3 weeks of this, you're thinking something is massively wrong. What is going on with my body? What is happening? And I kept thinking I need to go to the doctors for this. I had an upcoming work trip that I was going to be traveling to Beijing for. And I got super worried. Now I'm going to be in a foreign country. I can't eat anything that I've ever been able to eat before. And this is considered the healthy food, right? I started realizing that my normal go-to, something needed to change, but I didn't know what yet. And my trip over to Beijing, I'm going to hurry and tell this story real quick. So I was having all these problems and they were 24/7. I could feel it in my body. It wasn't just at the time that I was digesting. It was 24/7. My body felt off. I hop over to China and immediately my body changes. Immediately, whatever I'm eating, like I can feel the nutritions. I can feel it like seep into my body and that my cells in my body is saying yes to this. And it's the first time like I really started associating and being able to feel that my body was trying to give me cues, like real cues. And spent 2 weeks there. And the whole time I kept thinking, oh, it's just a crazy coincidence that it happened to clear up the day I'm in some country eating weird food here. After those 2 weeks, the day I get back into America, back into home, Utah, there, I felt my body start flaring up again. It was all the inflammation. It was the stomach pain. It was all of this. Day one started occurring again. I thought, wow, okay, there's something I really need to look into here. What was I eating there? How vastly different are the foods there and what's cooked there and how it's processed there versus here in America? And everything, I mean, that's when I just went all into really, really paying attention to what my body needs, what's going on. And I kept thinking it was going to be maybe a few weeks of something that I just needed to work through out of my body, right? But there's maybe a month of, okay, I don't eat meat for a month, and then whatever was in my body is going to clear itself out, and then I'll go back to it. And a month would pass and I would try and go back to my, version of healthy eating, and immediately my body would get inflammation. I'd be in all the pain. All of that would come immediately back. I thought, okay, maybe it needs 2 months, right? So I kept playing with this, and right, I'm 4 to 5 years in now, and I've given up on trying to play with having, thinking that there's some other way that I'm supposed to be going back to. Yeah, that just, my body is like, hell no. Are you listening?
So I think one of the things that like I really have admired in you is that you have this real ability to actually intuitively know what your body wants to eat at any given moment. And that's something that I feel like I have struggled with so much in my life. And we were speaking at breakfast about the processing of food. So we're both from the United States. We're in Bali right now. We are both from the United States. We're actually both from the same hometown in the United States, but we didn't know each other when we lived in Utah.
Our whole life.
Yeah, our whole entire life. But we met here in Bali, and then have since become friends. But one of the things that we were talking about is that how removed we are from those intuitive cues that our body gives us. And we were talking about one of what we believe the reasons is for that is how the food is processed in the United States. So it's the geophosphate, it's all of the chemicals, all of the pesticides, all of the additives, and the GMO manipulation and mutation of our foods that actually creates a fogginess or an inability to connect with the body. And so as a result, we have a whole country, and I don't think this is just the case in the United States. There's a lot of Western nations, I think, that has this issue. And one of the things I love is seeing so many of the European countries right now starting to ban this stuff. So, some parts of the world, improving, and other parts of the world getting worse. But yeah, like it's created this real disconnection for us, and this inability to actually feel or hear the cues of the body, because we're living in this almost kind of
connected.
Yeah, it's like chemical fog.
Yeah. Yep. It's and it not only the energy and the fog and all of that, but then there's so much conditioning, right? And everything from the commercials, from all of the fad diets that are out there, just everything that is constantly in your face. This is what you should be doing. This is why you should be doing it.
This is how you should look.
Oh my God. Yeah. Right. So we have all of these success stories and all of this, just knowledge that's out there that is very easily to say, oh, I align with this, or I should be doing this, or let me try this now. This is a success for others, right? And here's all the proof of it, like this should work for me then. Another whole, just experience where it's like, how much are we removing from just sitting within ourselves and actually listening to ourselves instead of all of the information that's out there? I mean, all of that's just adding to this fog and just blocks. It's removing, it's like taking away your own power, right? You're putting it out there to be influenced by anything and everything that's there, instead of, oh, hold on, let's come back here. But that's hard. That's hard to even start that. How to actually really get into, well, what is my body saying, right? Is my body craving this? I mean, that's a big difference of, I think I know what my body wants, right? Like all the cravings, you're thinking it's that, but really being able to sit, I remember, in the very beginning for me, it was interesting. I had this massive craving for red beets, which I still love, all beetroot stuff, but I had this massive craving for red beets. And for an entire week, that's all I ate. And there wasn't a moment that I sat with, oh my gosh, where's my protein, or how am I going to keep up my workouts? How am I going to, right? What is this going to do to me? Not even at all second guessing. It was just like, oh, my body has this massive crave for it. And so I'm listening to that, and I'm just going to keep eating it until it wants me to eat something else.
Yeah. So I think this is something that's really, really important to talk about, because we do outsource our wellness and our well-being in almost every area of our life. So instead of really looking to ourselves as our own inner healer, inner physician, and the reality is that our bodies, it's a miracle that we're even sitting here talking on this podcast. Like, we literally walk around in these miracle suits.
It knows how to do everything.
Yeah, it knows how to do everything. It knows how to heal itself. It knows how to regenerate. We and our own, best laid plans is what reduces our longevity, is what creates disease in our body, because we're so removed from actually listening to it and letting it function at its peak and optimal performance. And that is because we outsource that inner knowing. We don't allow ourselves to actually be our own alchemists and our own healers. And I think that this is very hard because we're actually programmed and conditioned to outsource it. So we have regulatory bodies and agencies within our, countries that are like, this is how you're going to eat. This is how you're supposed to eat, the food pyramid.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's all misinformation. And again, we're trying to put there's one way. Here's this cookie cutter way that you're an American, so you follow the American standardized food pyramid. And all of you, regardless of where your ancestry is or your genetics are, you're all going to eat this way, and this is what's healthy. And so then you have this nation of people going like, oh yeah, I need to, the foundation needs to be carbs, and then I'm going to follow this pyramid, and I'm going to be healthy. And
let's start by teaching it in the school and supplying that as the food that's provided for our kids, from youth all the way up to adulthood. And
it's so funny. I think often our generation, we've had it so rough because we've been through so many variations of no, you know, it's high fat, no, it's low fat, it's low carb, no, it's high carb. Like they've told us so many different things that we've literally yo-yoed our whole lives. And so of course we have no ability or idea to like tap into. I always tell the story about my grandmother because I know that she just thought we were all crazy. Like my grandmother was from Idaho. She was the daughter of farmers. She continued farming like to some degree her whole entire life. She ate what she grew and she ate a lot of animal products, but she ate very little processed food. She cooked her foods in like bacon grease and lard, you know, and we our whole lives were like, oh my gosh, grandma, it's so bad for you. Like, you know, you're gonna die, you're gonna have a heart attack, cholesterol, all this stuff, you know, like we were always harping on her. And she just was like, okay, you guys do what you're gonna do, but I'm gonna do what's been tried and true in my family and in my generations. And the women in my family, you know, from her on back, all lived into their 90s. Like she died at 98.
And they're strong, hardworking
Yeah,
women.
and she was still
right?
gardening. She was still
Yeah.
canning. She was still gardening. She was doing all that stuff. And, you know, now with all the research and everything that's coming out, I just look at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, she knew all along. But she grew up on the land. She grew up eating the food that she was growing in the land, and she knew what her body needed. Like she got to a point where she was like, I can't eat eggs anymore. She'd eaten eggs her whole life, but all of a sudden her body was like, I can't eat eggs. And instead of like continuing to eat eggs and then like taking a pill and trying to sort it out, she was just like, I can't eat eggs anymore. And then she never ate eggs again, you know? And it's like, and we were all just like, you know, trying to convince her to come over to our standardized food pyramid or whatever the latest craze was. And she's just looking at us like, okay, you know, and the proof was in the pudding. And not only was she strong and healthy and still, you know, living in her house when she died and gardening and doing all of this stuff, but mentally she was so sharp. She didn't have the cognitive decline that we're seeing now in, you know, the people that are her children's age that are having all of these autoimmune issues, all of these, you know, and dementia and Alzheimer's.
And all that is coming from food too. I mean, I fully believe that, you know, that it's manifesting in so many ways in our body, in our brains, in every way, that disconnect, that fog, everything that we're consuming. You know, when you were talking about that she was eating off of her land, what she poured into it. I am big on that. There's a level of frequency in every food that we pick up, and that frequency is based off of from the very beginning of how it was planted, the soil, right? How it was cared for, how it was loved. I mean, the one thing I see here that's just adorable always when I see in Bali are the farmers here. I mean, barefoot, not gloves, not machines. I mean, they are touching and loving and pouring themselves in to the farms here, to what's being grown. But to have that kind of energy, I mean, we know in every way, our thoughts, our energy, how that pours in. And then not only that, you know, how it's grown, but then also who's turning around and cooking it. It's not mass produced and added all these chemicals and all of this other, right? Even just the mass produced tools and the mass produced ways of things, of thinking that it's money and it's money, right? Like, what do we have to do for that value of it, instead of that this is something I've grown and this is right where my love and my passion is. And now I'm cooking it with that same kind of energy. All of that all forms up and brings you to a vibration of the food, which all of that goes out the door. All of that is that fogged over as soon as we start messing with it, with all the chemicals, GMO, all the other stuff.
We look at like the industrialization of our agriculture processes and our farming practices. Like we are like, oh, we need to make more. We need to make more and we need to do it quicker. And, you know, we can't wait for the wheat to bloom. Let's spray it with Roundup so it does it quicker, you know, and it's like, let's spray it with poison. So it comes to harvest quicker so we can yield more, so we can make more, you know, and that, you know, kind of brings us, I think, to like, I'm a carnivore, you're primarily vegan. But I think that we can look at like what we're talking about, especially in that industrialization of the processing of foods. It's the same from a animal-based products perspective as it is from a only vegetable-based diet. So regardless of which you're choosing, if you're choosing animal-based or you're choosing plant-based, there has to be an awareness of how the food is being grown, cared for, and processed, because there's a lot of garbage meat out there where animals are injected full of hormones and they're treated incredibly poorly, and you're eating diseased meat essentially. And there are a ton of vegetables that are sprayed with poison that are, between the pesticides and the growth factors and the everything that they're doing to mass produce plants.
And it doesn't matter if it's labeled organic. I mean, I'm telling you right now. So it's hard to know what is your go-to, how to trust that, how to know, right, the product that you're getting and how it was treated and all of those things.
We have to be intentional, I think, in where we're purchasing our food from, as much as we can, because like you said, unfortunately, especially in America, it is almost impossible to actually find and source good food unless you're growing it yourself or the farmer that's growing it.
Yeah.
Because you cannot trust the labels. You cannot trust what is organic. You cannot trust what is grass-fed. You can't trust any of that. And, being in this part of the world, like we were both talking about, when we return to the United States and we taste the food, it tastes chemical to us. Like being out of there and not being exposed to all of those additives and pesticides and toxins and poisons that Americans, and I think Australians as well, are getting in their day-to-day diets. When you're gone from it and then you go back and taste it, it tastes horrible. Like I can't even explain.
Your body is on this very high, what's the word I'm looking for? It can just recognize, right? It's recognizing what is pure and what is not, and immediately.
And do you gain weight every time you go back to the United States?
Every time. Inflammation happens on me.
Yeah.
The very first day, I feel inflammation in my body. So, I mean, it's, day one of that, then let alone, even if I'm only there 4 weeks, it is massive. And it takes about 2 to 3 weeks of me being back here in this environment that everything rebalances.
Yes. I was going to say it's about a month. Yeah. Every time I come back, it's about a month until I'm I'm feeling semi-normal. So I guess the elephant in the room is that we have very different eating styles. I am completely carnivore. So I eat 0 plants. I eat no plants at all. And
plant-based.
And Amy is plant-based. And, the interesting thing I think is that from one perspective, I've always said that this podcast is fully all-inclusive. And so I think this is the 3rd episode. So this shows that you can be here whether you're a vegan or a carnivore. I'm obviously going to share about my journey on this podcast because I've had such incredible transformations happen. But I really believe that each person, it's individual, your health journey, how you step into the highest expression of who you came here to be from a holistic perspective is individual to each person. We are so unique. We carry a unique energy signature, and our genetic makeup for each and every one of us is unique. Unless we are an identical twin, we do not have the same genetic makeup as somebody else on this planet. And so I think it's really important to understand that. And that's why I thought this episode would be such a great idea to do, is to kind of, show how we eat entirely different things, but we actually approach that eating from a very similar perspective. So I hope that this can bring some carnivores and vegans together, because as we know, we have extremists on both sides of the fence. The carnivores are freaking brutal, crazy people that think that anybody that eats a plant is trying to kill themselves. And
you can only imagine what it is on my side.
On the vegan side, they're you are murdering, and you're a murderer and you're a killer.
They have feelings.
Yeah. So, I wanted to have this conversation because you know, even in going out to eat, we just kind of laugh because it's like, we never have a problem. We go to whatever restaurant and she sits down and orders a plant-based meal and I sit down and order a animal.
And we love
meal.
it. And it's like, how is yours? Is it so good?
Yeah.
Oh, look at the fat that's on yours, tucked in that meat, right? She's like, oh, look at your beef. I miss beef. But how it makes us feel. And, you know, I have to point out too, I'm not strictly plant-based and strictly vegan. I mean, it is something that if you had to put me in a bucket, right? If you had to put me in some kind of category, that is what I'd associate with. But the thing that I have really recognized throughout this whole journey of mine, it is really just identifying at almost every meal what feels right for me, right? And it for the most part falls in a very vegan diet. But there are many times that I look at and what's in front of me, if I'm maybe even if I'm out at a holiday party and I'm starving and what the food is in front of me, I don't even know what it is or how it was cooked or really what I'm up against, what's in the sauces, but I need something in my body, right? We do a lot of intuitive, what is the best thing out of my options that I have right here in front of me? They may not be ideal, but I'm here out of these options that I have, what is going to be of the highest frequency that my body can actually, right, take in, that is going to be able to work with my body. And sometimes it's mind-blowing what that is, what part, you know, what really shows up in that too. So even to, you know, those that are really feeling, you know, really making a change in their diet and in their way of nutrition, there's a big difference in looking at what's really in a category and in a bucket and really saying, what parts of that aligns with me and maybe what doesn't. And it doesn't mean that I'm not going to get the same results or that I'm not following it exactly to the T if I'm not having the same results, right? Really like be listening to your body and what is that? And it may be a total different package that's out there that nobody else has even, right? It doesn't work, doesn't align for somebody else. Their, you know, their genetics through their DNA, through everything that really makes up what makes our body thrive.
So you've had quite a radical like weight transformation since I initially met you here on the island. And I'm curious, how much of that do you attribute to actually being able to reset that inflammation in your body so that you could experience the results? Because you've been eating like this before you left the United States, but you had this massive transformation when you got to Bali. So how important do you think eliminating that inflammation was in your body being able to respond in the way that it has now?
I mean, you pointing that out, it's, I have not thought that and navigated down thinking that, but it's night and day. I mean, it's obvious to me how massive that was. And every time, like, that's the first thing I feel when I go back to the US. And then that weight gain. And the first thing that I feel coming back here is that inflammation coming off. And then my body starts rebalancing. But you're right, you know, I mean, it was something that for years before leaving the US, I really had started changing my food intake and my diet. And then even the first year here in Bali, but I also was eating out at a lot of the restaurants here that really do accommodate Western ways of cooking. So we're still talking lots of the oils and just a lot of, right, stuff that's imported. And not really, I mean, they're accommodating our food taste. And it's like, ah, damn it, they're still poisoning us. But all of that really shifted when the longer and longer, so let me cut that just a quick moment here. When I first came to Bali, I would stay about 2 months and then I would head back to the US for a month. And then after quite some time of that, back and forth, then I would stay longer and longer in Bali and shorter in the US. And it was interesting to see the longer and longer that I could stay here and committed and being really in on being able to eat the foods that were just massive hell yeses to my body. And the longer I had that, the more and more my body was really transforming. It was struggling as I was doing so much of this back and forth between America and eating those foods and coming back here, was never having the true time for everything to really work with my body.
For the healing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I bring that up because I know that for me, like one of the immediate changes and shifts in my body when I went carnivore was the reduction in inflammation. And I had been, obviously I've been out of the United States for a long time. I haven't spent any significant amount of time back in the United States. But again, I was living in Bali and eating a primarily Western diet. So still having a lot of sugar, a lot of oils, like in just the cooking and the preparing of the food. And so when I eliminated all of that, like the first thing to go was inflammation. And I think when we say inflammation, we think different things, right? Like for me, I had inflammation in every single part of my body. And as a result, I had chronic fatigue, I had joint pain, I had degeneration happening in my shoulders and in my knees. I had massive sciatic pain. I was living and operating, for the last 10 years, probably between a 7 and an 8 on a pain level every single day because of the inflammation in my body. But so then that was the first thing that started going when I became carnivore. And I think part of that has to do with animal based, but the other part of it, which I think is so fascinating to explore how this also happened for you, is that it was an elimination diet. We were eliminating the things that were probably and most likely high histamine reaction foods and that were causing inflammation in our bodies. And I mean, even like the first transformation that happened in me was my face. And if you look at photos of me from, even I'd say 9 months ago, even 6 months ago, my face and the angles of my face look entirely different. My nose, the inflammation that went down in my nose in the first 4 weeks was wild. Like I was like, I had inflammation in my face. Like I didn't even realize that. I mean, my joints were feeling better and I was sleeping and I wasn't in pain. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'll probably never go back to a not animal-based diet again because of just, I'm at a 0 pain level from a 7 and 8, which is, I mean, that's completely life-changing and transformative.
My funny moment was my fingers. Like I had no idea. Let me just put it this way. Every single ring that I brought over from America does not fit any of my fingers. Like I can't wear one of my rings that I once had, but it was in my fingers how much had gone down. I mean, everywhere in my body, right? But just, it was fascinating that I'm like, my ring size on my hand has been this my whole life. And how all of a sudden, none of my rings fit me, but it's interesting. And it's interesting how immediately I can feel that inflammation. I mean, it's just this layer that immediately.
Well, you learn what it feels like. That's the interesting thing. You live your whole life with it when you have it. And then once it's gone and it comes back, you're like, oh, that's inflammation. That's what that feels like. But when you've been living with it your whole life, you don't know that it's that. You're like, oh, it's this kind of pain. It's this type of pain. And it's like, no, that's actually food, allergen, inflammation that's happening in your body. So I think like, if I were to give anyone advice, I'm not going to advise you on what type of diet is right for you, but I do absolutely believe that elimination diets are key, especially if you're living in Western nations where you're just being poisoned, right? So cutting out all oils, cutting out like things that are chemically treated and processed is such a good place to start, because if you can get that inflammation down in your body, then you're actually going to be able to begin to hear and feel your body's cues to you. You'll start to be able to understand like what's right for you, what's not. For me, going carnivore I thought it was going to be hard, and it was so easy. Like it was so easy. I had relatively little cravings, have had relatively little cravings, suffered a bit with oxalate dumping, which is just processing the plant toxins from the body. That has been a little bit difficult here and there, but I've been able to stay on top of that with electrolytes. But it was so obvious that it was what my body wanted in the ease of the transition and in the ease of the reduction in the inflammation and how much better I felt within a few days. So I think that's, it doesn't take your body a long time to respond to a way of eating that is right for your body. Like you just have to kind of embark on the journey. And I think even being really conscious in that you want to return to a relationship with your body. I'd love for you to share, because I know that you do kinesiology or muscle testing sometimes when we're out and you're choosing what to eat. And we had a really interesting conversation at breakfast this morning about intention and how, like, even the intention of the change, even the intention of the transformation, even the intention of beginning to trust your body starts to create that shift. So I'd love for you to share like how you use kinesiology and muscle testing, and then maybe a little bit about how we were saying like just doing that is signaling to your body that you trust it.
Yeah, right. Building that relationship with your body and how to even start that when it's something we've never maybe even cued into before, right? I want to say, the muscle testing. So probably what really started this for me is where I'm living now. It's on a small island. It's a boat hop away from Bali, but I spent a lot of time in the villages and I have no idea what they're cooking for me. Like legit, I have no idea what it is. And sometimes they're cooking with the whole chicken foot and I don't know, just different things, right? Still very beautiful, ancient tribal living there. And so there's many times where I don't want to offend them and I need to be sitting down and eating. And I'm like, I don't know what's what. And I don't even know if I'm going to enjoy any of this food. But what I don't want is to take something that later I'm going to be in pain. And it's going to cause just problems with me. So that's really where I kind of started off. Like, I don't know what to pick. I don't know what to eat. Like, I don't know what this is. And I can't communicate with them. They don't speak English. So I'm like, how am I going to pick this? Because my body is very, very sensitive to foods now. And that's what's the beauty of it. I wouldn't say it's sensitive in a weak way. It's as intentional as I am with my body, it is with me. And in that, so I do muscle testing, just right. I've got my own with my hands, identifying what is right for me, what is not. And a lot of times I will specifically ask, what is the highest vibration out of these options that are in front of me? What is the highest frequency that my body can hold, right? Food is only meant to fuel us. If the whole purpose of it is to fuel my body, is to keep my vessel moving. And I want my vessel to be so clean and clear that at all times I'm connected, I'm channeled, I'm getting the messages. I don't want that fog. I don't want those blocks. I don't want everything that disconnects me. And so asking and saying, what is the highest frequency for my body in the now moment? I hands down trust whatever that is. And I don't know what the fuck I'm eating. I don't know if I'm eating I don't know. I don't even want to throw it out there. But I trust it. And so we were laughing because I was mentioning this morning that there's times that I'll sit down at a restaurant. I'm like, all right, what do we got here? What's the highest vibration or the highest frequency? Is it in the pasta section? No. Okay. It's not that. Is it in this section on the menu? And your eyes immediately, it's like, oh God, I sure hope it's like this specific thing on the menu. I'm craving it. That's what it's got to be. That's what it's got to be. I muscle test and it's not. I'm like, oh, fuck. Keep going down the muscle testing, right? Until I identify which one is it that is the highest, best for my body, that's going to be able to actually be processed. And I'm going to get the most nutrients and everything right through my body. And sometimes it's just beyond surprising of what that is the hell yes, this is what your body needs. And sometimes it's right. It could be the donut that's on the menu. It could be something that's in the dessert and you're thinking, no, there's no way it can be this. Like I need nutrients. I'm needing, right, something else in this. But to have that just unshakable truth and trusting that whatever is in there, and it may not be the ingredients, it may be the frequency that holds for whatever reason. And I'm just trusting that. I'm trusting that that's what's needed, that my body is going to handle it just fine. And I'm receiving what I need to out of this, right? The food is just for those purposes and those purposes only. The other day we were out at some restaurant and there's this massive list of teas. Like, how many tea do they, like,
I don't know, 40, over 40 probably,
Yeah.
right?
all these options of teas and amazing flavors and this and that. And I get an immediate of what it is that my body is wanting. I don't even know what kind of tea it is. I order it and I cannot chug that thing if I wanted to. It was not good tasting at all, right? Like, but it was this undeniable truth. Whatever is in here, it is what my body is needing. I think that's when I had the ear infection and I kept getting that it was for something that my body was working through. And I think it was the ear infection. And it was just trust it. Trust that that's what you're supposed to be drinking and move along, right? Not questioning it. The second we question any of those kind of nudges or any of those ways of, right? There's so many tools in a way of connecting with our body and trying to get the answers and to help make us, to help make decisions. But anytime we doubt that, that is an immediate way that we are disconnected from our body and we're blocking and saying, I don't trust you. I need to go get some validation somewhere else. I need to go get some facts somewhere else. I need to research this, or, right? You're fully in that moment, just blocking yourself from your body. And it takes like a building up, like there's this trust process that takes in your body, right? You've got to show in every single way that you show up for your body and those nudges and those messages you're getting. And in that, in every single moment, not question it. And when you do that, it is amazing how strong and how fully connected you are to your body in all the ways. It's going to communicate more with you. It's going to communicate stronger with you. It is going to be working side by side with you. This is something I do even in my exercising and working out. I will say what cells in my body as I'm like running laps around or running on the treadmill, right? What cells in my body are not vibrating at the highest frequency? Like, move those out of the way, right? You can start taking this to where you are just so much in your power of you and your body and in every way working with it from all aspects, right? From nutrition to physical to just being able to even being connected to your guides. Like I view that as a big part of it. You have to be clean and clear in your vessel to have that kind of connection.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's, it's this idea of you're the captain of your ship and you get to command your body to heal. You get to command your body to release those dead cells.
Mm-hmm.
You get to command your body to instruct you in what's in the highest and best good of it. But I think, again, that's the part that hinders us is the outsourcing, like the outsourcing of that truth and not coming back to ourselves. I used to consider myself a foodie. Like I was like, I'm a foodie. And I had all these reasons and excuses why I should continue to eat poorly. Because I love food, because I love this kind of food. I love bread. I love pasta. I love all these things, right? Where I'm like, I have all these excuses why. I love wine. I can't stop drinking alcohol because I love having a glass of wine with dinner. I can't stop eating bread because, it goes so good with this thing. Like it's just
comfort food.
Yes.
It's
all these excuses for why I wasn't actually listening to my body. And that's not to say that somebody else can't eat pasta, but my body does not want pasta. And it has been very clear with me for many, many years that it doesn't like gluten and it doesn't like bread and pasta, but I would just keep eating it. And, I think that there's also the stigmas and the social, what's the word I'm looking for? The social stigmas, but also the social dynamics around food. Like we are a species that celebrates life events
Uh-huh.
by eating or drinking. And when we're like, oh, we're eliminating or we're cutting back or we're changing that in some way, it's very difficult for the people around us that we're stepping out of old patterns and old ways of doing things because it's against the status quo. It's against the norm.
Even the basics of there's breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? There's in the beginning for me, I would constantly be like, oh my gosh, it's already 2 o'clock. Me and the kids haven't eaten. We need to eat. Not stopping and thinking, am I hungry? Wait a minute, are you guys hungry? Is there anything we actually need to do? Right? Like we get in on this clockwork and we think, okay, well, to start my day, I need to have this fuel. And it's because that's, like an apple a day or right, breakfast first thing in the morning. We get in this complete program that we completely forget to just stop. Does my body even need it? Wait a minute, what's going on here? That was a big thing, like I noticed immediately for me, how much of a program I was running on that. And not only that, like that I specifically need to make sure that I had protein, right? Very specific, right? Pieces with each meal instead of I'm craving beets for like 3 days solid and that's all I'm going to be consuming. And I feel great.
Yeah.
Ah.
So any last, maybe a piece of advice for people that want to are maybe stuck and feeling frustrated and feeling like they can't listen to their body or they're disconnected. Like what's a piece of advice or a takeaway that you would give somebody that wants to become more in tune and more connected?
I would say to get very playful with different ways of testing your body. And it's just going to start, it's going to start the bonding of your body being able to communicate with you, but just fun, simple ways, right? Put on your phone, just these reminders or on your fridge, a Post-it note that when you open that fridge, you're simply going to do some muscle testing. Like that's a very quick and easy tool to start practicing when maybe you don't have the immediate intuitive nudges or the immediate physical response when looking at food or holding food. And that's something that like your body wants to get you to that place where you can look at a food item and have the immediate response in your body and the immediate cues. So start using tools in just a very fun, like interactive way of, okay, there's 3 things laying out here in front of me. I'm just going to pick and choose the one and go with that. But it's just starting to get playful and saying, I'm trusting this. I'm not going to be sitting and thinking about the calorie count that's associated with that, or how that plays in my overall eating today. Does that mean I had too much carbs, or how is that going to affect my working out? I mean, just getting out of the monkey mind of it and saying, nope, I'm coming and I'm just going to start in some fun, simple ways of making a decision and allowing myself to trust it, not think twice about it, not immediately start blocking it and self-sabotaging. And what is that going to do to me? Because all of that just does the reverse effect on communicating with the body.
Yeah. And if you're not familiar with kinesiology or muscle testing, definitely just go look it up. There's so many great tutorials on how to go about doing that in many different ways. And you can find the way that works best for you. But I'm an emotional clearing practitioner, so it's a tool actually that I use a lot in my life, though I don't use it so much with my eating. My takeaway for you would be, or my suggestion for you would be, if you're looking to change your way of eating or step into a place of being able to be more intuitive in your way of eating, would be to, start eliminating things that we know create problems or inflammation in the body, and I think the most obvious of those to begin with is sugar and oil. So those 2 things, if you cut out sugar and oil, are going to make a dramatic difference in the level of inflammation that you have in your body. And I think just in removing those things, which it's very difficult, I feel like, to make a decision to do that because sugar and oil is in everything. So, making a decision just to eliminate those for a period of time and see how you feel and see, how much better you're actually able to connect and the other interesting thing about eliminating oil and sugar is that food will begin tasting different to you. And so you're going to have an immediate different response to the food that you're eating when you're not masking it with vegetable oils or sugar. So I think, for me, if at bare minimum, it would be to do that. And if you are inclined to go into a stricter elimination diet, then certainly, I think for a period of time, it really serves you to be able to like get the mixed signals and the miscommunications out of the way so that, like Amy said, your vessel is clear and you can actually begin to tap into what your body really wants and what your body really needs, regardless of your moral compass when it comes to food, regardless of, the way ideally you would like to be eating. And you may actually just find that the way that you thought you should always eat is the complete opposite of what actually works for your body. So, and I say that, by the way, as not just somebody who's animal-based and carnivore. I was vegetarian for 4 years. I was vegan for 4 years. Like, I have been in so many different avenues and paths on my health journey. And those things didn't work for me. They weren't good for my body. So much so that my vegan naturopath told me I had to start eating meat. As a vegan, he was like, this isn't working for you. Like, you need to start eating meat. So everyone is different. You are so beautiful. You are so unique. And so stop outsourcing your beauty. Stop outsourcing that deep inner knowing that you have. Stop outsourcing your connection with God, source, universe, all that is, your higher self, your guides, your guardians. Allow your body to begin speaking to you so that you can live a life of health and vitality.
I love it. Yep. I exactly, where you hit on the oils and the sugars, it really feels like that lifts just that first layer, right? So I think that's a perfect way to start and start getting connected to your body. Let it drive. It knows exactly what it needs.
Amazing. Well, thanks for being on the show. We'll probably do more of these as we're continuing on our life journeys, and our health and wellness journeys. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the show. As always, like, welcome and love feedback, what you'd love to hear more on. If you have any questions, you can always just email podcast@theleahsteele.com. We will also put that in the show notes, and we will share in the show notes where you can go and follow Amy on social media. And so until next time, this is Leah Steele and Amy Behan, and I am officially now kicked off and into my road to 50, and lots of exciting things coming, lots of exciting people coming on the show, and some surprises in my personal health and wellness journey that I'm going to be sharing with you as well. So until next time, ciao.